My name's Brian. I raised my son right, or at least I thought I did, until his wife looked me in the eye, called me useless, and left me stranded in a country where I didn't even speak the language. No phone, no money, no help, just shame and silence. But here's what she didn't see coming. 48 hours later, I was standing at her gate. So now tell me, who's useless now? The heat hit me like a wall the moment I stepped off that plane. It wrapped around my neck, thick and unapologetic. Lagos was alive, buzzing, shouting, pulsing with color and motion. Street vendors hollered out prices, kids weaved between cars barefoot like it was nothing, and drums echoed from a distance like some forgotten heartbeat. It had been years since I traveled outside the States. This trip. It was supposed to mean something. An invitation to my son's anniversary celebration, a sign I was finally being included, even if late in the game. I held on to that hope tighter than my carry-on. They picked me up late from the airport. I stood there for over an hour, trying not to look like a forgotten suitcase. When they arrived, it was Amina who greeted me, not my son. She smiled, all tight and polite, like she had better places to be. Her people welcomed me. Too much food, warm hands, curious eyes. But even as they served me jollof rice and pepper soup, I noticed I wasn't part of the photos. They'd gesture for the group to gather, and somehow I was always out of frame. At first, I told myself I was imagining things. Maybe it was jet lag. But by dinner that night, the whispers stopped being whispers. "You were supposed to pick me up," I said, keeping my voice even. Amina looked at me like I was a slow student. "We said 3 p.m. You weren't there." I checked my watch. I was there at 2:30. My son didn't look at me, just reached for his drink. "Let's not do this, Pop." Right then, I knew. I wasn't a guest, I was a ghost. Amina ran that house like a CEO. She set the schedule, handled the driver, even told folks when to sit. My son? He followed her lead. I watched it all, biting my tongue, swallowing that tightness in my chest. That night, I stood on the balcony, the city, breathing below. I didn't belong. Not in that house, not in that country. But I still had my name. The next morning, I woke up alone. The house was quiet, too quiet. I reached for my bag, gone. Every zipper in that room was closed, empty. I checked the door, locked. No note, no message. I knocked on the neighbor's gate. "They left early," he said. "Tour, I think." I checked my pockets. No passport. No phone. $43 in cash and an old bus receipt from Atlanta. That's it. I walked for hours, confused, sweating, heart pounding with disbelief. Eventually, I found a church, a quiet building with peeling paint and a cross half hanging on the wall. An old woman gave me a plastic cup of water and a bench to sit. I closed my eyes. "Lord," I said, "I done been through worse. Show me what this is for." Later that afternoon, I sat outside a corner shop. That's when he showed up, Olusegun, retired schoolteacher. Clean shirt, steady eyes. He looked at me like he knew pain when he saw it. "You lost?" he asked. "Not lost," I said. "Just left behind." He bought me tea. We sat on a stoop and talked. I didn't tell him everything, but enough. He listened. "It's not the abandonment that hurts," I said. "It's that my silence was taken as weakness." He nodded. We're taught to hold our tongues, but sometimes silence gives permission. We talked about manhood, about how we fathers show up, even when we ain't seen, about the price of being strong so long, nobody checks if you're tired. I told him, I may not have a plane ticket, but I got one thing they forgot. I had memory. The next day, I walked to the consulate. Took hours to explain, verify, wait. But I knew patience. I'd stood in longer lines for less. They let me use emergency access, filled out forms, took a new picture. While I waited, I found hotel stationery. Wrote a letter, not to beg, not to blame. Respect ain't given, but if it's stolen, it can be reclaimed. I still had a card tucked in my sock. Emergency funds. Used it to buy a return ticket. Didn't even tell them. They didn't need to know. Within 48 hours, I was on a plane. Touching back down in Atlanta felt like waking from a dream you didn't want to remember. I stepped out of that terminal with a duffel bag slung over my shoulder and my old cane tapping against the pavement. No fanfare. No, "Welcome back, Dad." Just me, breathing in stale airport air and flagging down a cab like any other tired traveler. I didn't go to their house. Wasn't time for that. Instead, I told the driver to drop me off at a motel I used to see off the interstate. No frills, just a bed and working locks. The kind of place that don't ask questions. I paid cash, kept to myself. Out the window, everything looked polished, perfect lawns, imported cars, folks jogging with dogs that probably ate better than I did growing up. But I knew better. Just 'cause the grass is cut don't mean there ain't snakes in it. That kind of pretty hides a lot of rot. I logged into my old email on the motel's borrowed tablet. Not a single message. Not even a "you good?" from my own blood. That silence? It was loud. Louder than any apology they'd never say. I went down to the front desk the next morning. Asked to borrow a phone. Pretended it was for a job interview. The young man handed it over without blinking. I pulled up their socials. Photos, plenty of them. My son grinning, Amina tossing her hair back in laughter. Plates of brunch like a magazine cover. No caption, no mention. Just smiles stretched wide enough to erase me completely. It was like I never existed. I didn't get mad. Not right. Then. I just got ready. I had a prepaid card I kept in my sock. Always did that when traveling, just in case. Rented a car from a no-name lot nearby. Picked a neutral SUV. Nothing flashy. I parked it 2 blocks from their gate, shaded by trees. From there, I watched. Kids played hopscotch in front yards. Neighbors waved, laughed, watered plants, but nobody looked twice at me. Nobody remembered. That used to sting. Now, it gave me cover. "Let 'em think I'm gone," I whispered. "They'll talk different when they don't think I can hear." Second day, late afternoon, Amina stepped out alone. Just her and a fancy purse swinging off her arm. I waited until she passed the driveway. Then I stepped forward, slow, steady. She froze, eyes narrowing. "How did you even get back?" she asked. I didn't blink. "The same way I built this family, with grit," she scoffed. "You showing up here? You trying to make a scene?" I looked her dead in the eye. "No. Just making sure the scene don't rewrite me out." She took a breath. Looked back at the house. "You need to go before you start trouble." I smiled, but it didn't reach my eyes. I'm not the one who started anything. I just came to finish what never should have been left open. She didn't have a comeback. Just turned and walked away like she had groceries in the car, like I was some old memory that showed up uninvited. That night, I drove a few streets over. Parked in front of Zola's house, used to be our neighbor, before they moved to that big zip code. I knocked, and when she opened that door, her eyes got big. "Brian? Lord, it's been a minute." We sat in her kitchen. She poured sweet tea like nothing changed. "They've been acting brand new ever since they moved here," she said. "Amina?" Always running her mouth, talking about cutting off dead weight. I leaned back. "Dead weight don't walk back up to your gate after being dumped overseas." She offered her basement suite, said it was empty, said I could stay. I didn't want to, but I said yes, not out of need, out of strategy. You don't fight from the street if you got a front porch to watch from. That evening, before sundown, I wrote a letter. Took my time, with the words, "I'm not here to demand space. I'm here to reclaim what was mine before you forgot who built your foundation." Folded it, tucked it in their mailbox. No knocking, no confrontation. I walked back to my car, engine off, windows cracked. Sat there in the silence, just me and the hum of the streetlights. The porch light flicked on, but the door never opened. I settled into Zola's basement suite with a quiet exhale. The walls were plain, the floor thin, but it was a place I could disappear into until I chose to reappear. Morning light would seep through a small window. I'd wake, stretch my back, and walk the neighborhood silent, observing, measuring. Neighbors glanced at me. A few nodded. Most ignored me. I felt like a memory in slow fade. Zola urged me to rest. I nodded but couldn't stay still. I pulled out a small notebook at night and wrote every slight, every omission, every word they said when they thought I couldn't hear. I muttered to myself, "It ain't the words they said, it's the way they forgot to look back." She would come in, cup of tea, whisper, "You're not the ghost, baby. You're the foundation they built on." I walk into Zola's living room one afternoon. Keisha, her niece, holds up a newspaper article. The headline, "New Legacy Center Opens. The Next Generation Giving Back." I lean forward. I don't see my name. Instead, the article credits only my son and Amina. I flip the page. There it is, my old tools displayed inside, labeled heritage pieces. My hammer, my wrench, my old business license plastered in photos. My blood runs cold. I force a laugh. They even took my hammer. Guess they needed that too. Zola's eyes flicker with anger. I quiet myself. Let him write history. I'll bring the truth to the table myself. A few days later, I see Darius sitting across from me at a local cafe. It's just him. No Amina. I order coffee. We both sip quietly. He thanks me for coming. The pause stretches. I lean forward. "You took my tools. You took my name. Why stop there? You want my story too?" He shifts, stammers that Amina handled it all. He insists he didn't know. I say softly, but firmly, "You think silence makes you innocent? That's the same thing I told myself when my daddy was wrong." His eyes drop. I see regret, confusion. I realize this isn't just a fight with Amina. This is a war against the quiet in my own son. Back at Zola's later, I replay every phrase, every hesitation. I feel no triumph, just weight. The real battle is against who Darius became under her influence, under my own silence. I recall words my mother told me long ago. A house ain't divided by hate. It's divided by the quiet. Did I teach my son endurance over resistance? I stare at my reflection. You taught him to endure, not to resist. That's on you, old man. The thought burns. It doesn't break me. It steals me. My mission shifts from revenge to revelation. That evening, Zola helps me sort through boxes and photo albums. I gather old receipts, workshop logs, tool inventories. She sets them on her kitchen table. She says, "If you're gonna burn a lie, you better light it with truth." I nod. I open my laptop and rough a plan to crash the opening ceremony of that center. This time, I won't be unnoticed. I glance at the printed invitation online. My lips move. They said I was useless. Let's see how useless the truth feels. I showed up like I was invited, even though I wasn't. Plain black suit, no tie, clean but quiet. I kept my shoulders back and my steps slow, drifting in behind the crowd like a man looking for the restroom. The event was already in full swing. Music humming, plates clinking, folks dressed like they was walking a red carpet, not remembering a man they left behind. They called it the Legacy Center. Big banner draped across the hall, shining in gold. My son's and Amina's names printed bold as daylight. No trace of mine. I moved along the edges of the banquet hall, nodding at old faces that once shared barbecue and Sunday blessings. Some caught my eye, froze mid-bite, then turned away. That told me everything. I passed by the food line, catfish, mac and cheese, sweet tea. I only reached for water. My eyes stayed on the stage, my thoughts tighter than my fists. I did more than build meals and walls. I built roots. One step at a time, I moved closer, blending into folding chairs and whispers. Amina took the mic first. Bright dress, voice sweet like syrup. She thanked the crowd, called out church folks, city council, her incredible husband, her visionary team, and the new generation rising. Not once did my name brush her lips. Then she pointed to a photo blown up on a stand behind her. It was my workshop, the one behind our old house. The smell of sawdust still burned in my nose, just seeing it. Tools hung perfect, like it was still in use. Except now it had a plaque under it that read, Legacy of innovation. The crowd clapped. Long, loud, blind. I didn't move. I stood still as granite, letting every second of that applause settle in. My voice stayed inside. This was mine before it became theirs. I didn't interrupt. I didn't need to. Silence came after the applause. That silence, that was mine. When the lights dimmed, I walked up to the photo, slow. I stared at it, my hammer, my blueprints, my damn workbench. There was a polished plaque bolted to the frame, founded by our visionary leaders. I raised my hand, stopped halfway. My fingers trembled, not from weakness, from memory. Someone behind me whispered, "They made it so pretty." I didn't turn. I just said, soft and steady, "They made it pretty because they erased the hands that built it." That landed heavier than I thought. Heads turned. I felt their eyes, felt her eyes. Amina was across the room, holding a flute of champagne, smile dropping like a curtain. That mask she wore, it cracked just for a second. The event carried on, but I didn't leave. I waited. I knew she'd have to go backstage, so I followed. Backstage smelled like sweat and perfume. She was there, talking to staff, clipboard in hand like she ran a company, not a family. She saw me and rolled her eyes. "You shouldn't be here. I'm where I belong." She motioned to security, then stopped. I stepped closer. "Why erase me? Paint over what I built?" She looked at me like I was something on her shoe. "You disappear when you stop being useful." I leaned in, calm as a Sunday prayer. "Watch me." That shook her more than yelling ever would. She stepped back. Her team paused, unsure. I left before they could regroup, found a side door, walked behind the curtains, and into a small storage room. Dim, dusty, half-opened boxes everywhere. I searched. Blueprints, permits, letters with my name, donation receipts with my initials still printed. They used my history to build their story. I pulled out my phone. Click, click, click. Every shot, a page in the book they tried to tear me out of. When I stepped outside, the sun had shifted low. The crowd was thinning out. My shoes crunched gravel as I walked to the car Zola loaned me. I didn't say goodbye to anyone. Didn't wave. I just looked back once and whispered, "Let them build their story. I'll show them the origin chapter." I read the text twice before putting my phone away. "Dinner tonight. I want to talk." No pleasantries, no apology. Just a request. Dressed as civility. I left Zola's house with my cane in hand. Steps quiet but determined. The night. Air felt heavy, like something was waiting. When I pulled up to their home, the gate was open. The butler nodded as I passed. Inside, the foyer held a frost. I recognized polished floors, framed family photos, and a hush that said, "Don't upset the arrangement." Amina stood at the archway, arms crossed. Darius hovered near the stairwell. The house smelled like fresh paint and tension. They'd laid the table like a peace offering, white linen, candles, silverware set just so. Guests murmured in adjoining rooms. I walked straight to the dining room, past floral centerpieces, and guests pretending not to recognize me. I pulled out the chair across from Darius and sat as if I belonged. Dinner began with small talk, weather, neighborhood projects. I waited until the hush between courses and slid a small frame forward. Inside, Zayden's drawing. He'd drawn Grandpa and me, with crooked houses and a smiling Sunday. Amina's face went pale. Darius stared at it. "That drawing," I said, voice low, "meant so much to me. You tore it. That was your first cut." The room fell silent. Guests exchanged glances. The drawing on the table turned into more than paper. It carried bloodlines, memories, erasure. Amina stood abruptly. "You can't rewrite history now." I leaned forward. "Then stop living off my reputation. You built on my work. That's not progress, it's theft," she said sharply. "You want attention, fine, but don't make this a spectacle." I held her stare. "This isn't spectacle. It's accountability." Darius rose, voice shaky. "You're embarrassing, Mom." I didn't raise my voice. I said, Embarrass? No. I want acknowledgement. You can't pretend you built something from nothing. Then the doors burst open. Zola stood there, firm and calm, Althea behind her. She looked right at Amina. She owes him respect. Althea stepped forward, holding a stack of papers. These archives, tax records they show, Mr. Booker's name before any swap. She waved the documents. Guests murmured. The shift in air was instantaneous. I looked at Zola and whispered, "You saw the man, not the label." I stood up. I came for peace, but I won't hesitate to wage war for justice. Amina's face darkened. She darted after me into the back garden. You want war? Let's play it then. I didn't turn back. I walked steady across the lawn. The night sky hung heavy overhead. Then I heard glass scrape. I looked over my shoulder. She held the torn drawing piece in her hand. Her eyes glistened tears or fury. I couldn't tell. You tore one drawing, I said softly. I'll tear down every lie that paper built. I stepped into my car, door clicking shut behind me. The night air slapped my face. The storm wasn't just coming, it was here. The hallway smelled like polished wood and fresh paint. A civic building, clean and cold. I got there 10 minutes early, just long enough to breathe before they showed up. The room they gave us was lined with plaques, framed faces, certificates from decades gone by. Some of them had mine in the background, like wallpaper history no one wanted to admit. I sat at the long table alone, listening to the distant buzz of voices down the hall. Then came the footsteps. First Darius, then Amina, her heels tapping out a rhythm of irritation. Their lawyer followed close behind. The community board members arrived in clusters, some familiar, some new. No handshakes, no smiles. I nodded once. Let them speak first. I controlled the floor by saying nothing, just watching. The meeting hadn't officially started. I pulled out a small stack of sealed envelopes, slid one to each person at the table. Before we begin, I said, open those. One by one, they tore the seals. I watched Darius's eyes drop. Amina stiffened. The board members whispered. Each envelope held copies black and white photos of my old shop, tool receipts, with my name, the original blueprint from 30 years ago. I cleared my throat. Slow. Read aloud from one tool list, 1,986, paid in full by Brian Marcellus Booker. A voice down the table muttered, "Is this legit?" I met their eyes. It's real. And every time you walked past that plaque outside the center, you walked past this truth hoping no one would ever see it. Amina tried to laugh, but it came out dry. This changes nothing. Darius sat quiet, flipping through his copy like he was searching for an escape. Then, the air changed. She reached into her briefcase and pulled out her own packet. Bryce, the attorney she'd hired after the dinner, stood and passed them around. These show discrepancies, she said. Backdated items, signatures that don't match. She looked straight at me. You want this battle? I'll give you one. Retract your claim, or I'll expose everything. I didn't flinch. Expose it. Let the light burn through every lie. Darius looked torn, trapped between the two of us. Some of the board members began shifting. One cleared his throat. We should take a closer look at all this. Just then, the back doors opened. Zola stepped in. Behind her, Althea. And in Zola's hands was something wrapped in cloth, an old church ledger, the one we thought was lost. She handed it over to the board chair. Donations, names, dates, all signed, all in his name. A woman at the table leaned forward. Her voice softened. I remember that name. He helped build the shelter behind the church. Amina tried to cut in. You can't spin this now. I leaned back. Watch me. The silence told me everything. Heads nodded, not many, but enough. The current shifted. No final decision was made that day. No resolution, no headlines. As I stood to leave, Amina blocked the doorway. Her voice low, tight. You think this is over? I didn't look down. Just breathed in. Steady. No. This is the beginning. I walked past her, down the long corridor, light cutting in through the high windows. As I reached the lobby, someone brushed my arm and whispered, "They're publishing your story tonight." I stopped walking, just for a second. Then, I stepped into the sunlight. I walked into the studio ahead of schedule, Althea at my side, tension coiled under my calm. The hallway was hushed, low lights, crew members moving in silence. Cameras stood ready, cables snaked along the floor, and monitors flickered with static. It felt like entering a sanctuary, strangely meant for confession. As I passed, framed posters of past broadcasts loomed, reminding me of all the times voices were heard, not mine. I thought of my younger self, speaking into a mic at a local radio station in my hometown, trying just to be listened to. Now this was full circle. This is where silence meets its microphone. The host greeted us in the green room, nodded to Althea, and led me to the guest panel. "We go live in 5 minutes," she said. The tension buzzed beneath calm surfaces. The broadcast began with archival footage, my workshop in Tennessee, the hands shaping wood, early tools laid out. Then the deed transfer appeared on screen, lines erased and rewritten, names shifting. A narrator's calm tone broke the quiet. Independent records confirm original ownership by Brian Marcellus Booker. In the audience, I saw Amina and Darius. Her face went still. His eyes widened. I leaned forward, chest tight, watching my erased past being revived before millions. The host turned toward me. "You asked for a moment to speak your truth. Please." I stood, voice firm. I wasn't a shadow in someone else's narrative. I was the opening chapter. They built on my foundation, then repainted it to hide who laid it. I traced the steps, how titles were swapped, how tools were rebranded, how gratitude was turned into erasure. A ping in the headset. The host turned. "We're now live with Amina's representative on call." A voice replied, "Mr. Booker's claims are overstated. He donated those resources voluntarily." I held steady. "If you silence me now, you erase your own credibility. You can't claim to build legacy while erasing its origin." The screen split into headlines. "Father reclaims legacy. Legacy Center controversy. Who built the dream?" Amina stormed off the stage, her chair scraping behind her. Darius remained, eyes haunted, audience murmurs rising. Backstage staff watched me differently, some nodding, some in shock. The host closed the segment. "We open this to community input." Cameras cut, lights dimmed. Althea and I exited. I felt adrenaline in my veins. "Truth's the only undefeated weapon," I told her. At Zola's later that night, the drawing was in my hands, the torn one from years ago, now digitally restored. I compared its edges to images in the broadcast. They matched perfectly. I whispered, "They tried to erase me." I reclaimed the image. Zayden's video call lit the screen. "Grandpa, I saw you on TV." His voice bright. Tears blurred my vision. "You saw me," I said. "You see me now. I see you." Then, a news alert. Amina. To respond. Live. In 24 hours. I inhaled. Deep. The night air pressed against the window. The truth was out. Now every lie had to answer. The sun rose slow and wide over the neighborhood park, casting a soft glow on the new community center. The building stood clean, strong, rebuilt, not just with concrete and paint, but with something heavier. Memory, forgiveness, maybe even love. I walked through the gate alone. It wasn't quiet, but it was peaceful. Kids shouting from the swings, bikes rolling over pavement, a dog barking somewhere down the block. The kind of noise that doesn't press on your chest. I stopped when I reached the bronze plaque by the entrance. My name, right beside the Holloway families. Not lower, not tucked behind. Right there, eye level. Where people had to see it. I stood still and watched a group of boys playing tag. They ran past me without hesitation. One yelled, "Watch out, Mr. Holloway," then laughed like he'd known me forever. I smiled, and in that moment, I knew something had changed. They finally saw me, not as a ghost of their guilt, but as part of their foundation. No reporters. No questions. My phone hadn't buzzed all morning. For once, nobody needed anything from me. The world had gone back to spinning slower, maybe softer, but it kept turning, and I was still standing. I was about to head inside when I felt someone approach from behind. I didn't turn right away, just listened to the footsteps. Measured, careful. She didn't wear heels this time. "Amina," I said without looking. "I came to listen," she replied. I finally turned. She wasn't dressed like someone going on air. No makeup, no scarf, no persona, just her. And for the first time in a long while, she looked tired. Human. We sat on a bench near the playground. I didn't say anything for a while, and neither did she. Just watched the kids, the world, the time pass. "I watched the whole thing again," she said, eyes fixed on a girl pushing a swing. "The broadcast, all of it. I didn't fast forward this time." "You didn't just hurt me," I said. "You erased me. That's your burden now, not mine." Her mouth trembled. She nodded. "I didn't want to lose control." I leaned back, folding my arms. "You lost it the moment you stopped showing compassion. That's when you lost." She didn't argue, didn't cry, just sat still, shoulders low. The silence between us wasn't angry anymore. It was heavier than that. Like two people standing in the same wreckage, just looking at what's left. Then I saw Darius coming from across the lot, Zayden's little backpack slung over one shoulder. He looked worn out. Not from the day, from the years, from pretending, from trying to keep everything quiet. He stopped in front of us, didn't look at his mother, just looked at me. "Dad," he said. "I've been trying to figure out what to say, but nothing sounds right. So, I'm just gonna say it. You were right. I didn't want drama. I wanted peace. But my silence made me part of the problem. I didn't answer right away." I looked at him, at the son I raised, and the man he'd almost lost himself becoming. "It takes a lifetime," I said slowly, "to teach courage to a child. And sometimes, the child teaches it back in a sentence." Zayden ran up out of nowhere, hugged his daddy's leg, then mine. That boy's timing was always something else. He didn't know what he'd interrupted, or maybe he did. Either way, it was perfect. The ribbon-cutting ceremony started soon after. The mayor said a few words. Then they asked me to speak. I stood in front of the mic, looked out at the folks gathered around, some I knew, some I didn't, and just said what I felt. "Legacy," I began, "ain't just about what we leave behind. It's about what we share while we're still breathing." A few people clapped. Not loud, not forced, just enough to let me know they understood. Zola stood near the back, phone in hand, tears in her eyes. Amina clapped too slow, unsure, but she clapped. And for the first time, I felt peace that didn't feel like giving up. It felt earned. That night, I walked up to my porch and saw an envelope sitting on the step. No name, no address, and first time. Just resting there, like it had been waiting for me all day. Inside was the drawing, the one that had been torn years ago, me, Zayden, and her, now restored, framed, the tape barely visible. At the bottom, Zayden plus Grandma. My breath caught. I went inside, walked to the wall where my late wife's photo hung. I placed the drawing beside it. Two things I never thought I'd see together again. Some wounds don't heal, they just stop bleeding. Outside, I heard kids calling out, "Mr. Holloway, come look at the new garden." I stepped outside, the evening air soft against my face. The sky was turning that deep orange that only fall knows how to make. I smiled. Not big, just enough. Maybe forgiveness ain't about them. Maybe it's about freeing yourself from the silence.